We're pleased to have our guest webinar speaker with us, Mr. Ed Zilinskas with MEC Exhibits. MEC is a Chicago-based custom display design and manufacturer service company located here. And Ed has been in the industry for many years. He averages about 2 trade shows a week, so he's very familiar with trade shows and how people behave at them. And if you're familiar with our show and have attended, you might know the Meyer booth, and that is one of Ed's creations. So we're pleased to have him. Also joining us today is Katie Till, who is our sales manager for the North Expo Hall. Many of you may be working with her already. This will be Katie's 10th show coming up in 2014, and Katie will be here as well as myself, Nancy Michael, Senior Manager of Business Development, to interject some of our knowledge here at Housewares. So welcome. Ed?
Thank you, Nancy. Everyone, thank you for joining us. I know everyone's a little busy planning their show, so I'll try to keep everything moving along quickly. But if you have any questions, please hit your chat button, and we'll address them as they're given to us. And for all of you who are participating, at the end of this webinar, what we'll be doing is sending out some gifts to a select few that we randomly draw from the list of participants. So please join in. My job today is primarily to help you with some direction with your sales staff. What I'm trying to do is help you achieve a higher return on your investment from the show. Now, I have worked in the exhibit industry for well over 20 years. I am involved with approximately 50 or more shows a year. So I get to experience, I get to watch what works and what doesn't. I also get to exhibit from time to time at a show called the Exhibitor Show in Las Vegas for trade show managers like yourselves. And I get to practice what I preach. So what I'm telling you is tried and true. One of the first things I think of is, when was the last time you were approached by a door-to-door salesman? It doesn't happen very often anymore. In the world of trade shows, the tables are reversed. Your salespeople are standing in your small company on that show floor. And your prospects are walking right by your door. So you need to take advantage of everybody walking by, and you need to be prepared to engage them. Every minute counts. With that said, what you need to do is tune up your staff. Don't waste time having them get into the flow of the show the first couple of hours, because you will have lost a lot of opportunity by then. They need to prepare, practice, and be ready for the show before they ever arrive. Now, I've met a lot of salespeople over the years, and even the best of them have to have some rust knocked off. Every day, they don't get the opportunity to practice face-to-face selling. So what we need to do is just remind them of what they're doing, or what they should be doing. As far as logistics are concerned, the show does not start on the very first day of the show. It starts as soon as you leave home. Once you leave home, you're going to be visiting some very key hotspots that are going to be, well, they're going to have other show participants, whether they're exhibitors, buyers, or people within your industry. You are going to be rubbing elbows with them. Places like the airport. So a very popular place. I can't tell you how many people I've actually met on airplanes from my shows. Your hotel. Obviously, you're surrounded at your hotel with all kinds of participants for the Housewares Show. The elevator is always a wonderful place to get to know people. You might be a little closer than you'd like, but this is a great time. Obviously, use your elevator speech. If you don't have one, develop one. Make sure within 30 seconds you can say who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And then, if there's any inkling of interest, ask the person you're speaking to for a business card. And of course, the trade show floor, which we'll be addressing more as we go. So now what we have to do is prepare for the show. first thing you have to do is understand why you're at the show and what your role is, or what each person's role is, whether it's sales or support, and in some cases just addressing the media. You also should be, if you're not already, inviting key prospects to the show to visit your space. Some of the statistics I'm going to use today come from an organization called SEER. SEER is the Center for Exhibition Research. And according to SEER, over a 4-day period, most buyers are going to spend time at approximately 30 meetings. Of those 30 meetings, 20 of them are typically planned. And what you want to do is get on their list. You want to be one of those 20 that are scheduled. You don't want to leave your meeting to happenstance. The Houseware Show is a very large show, spread out over 3 buildings. So whatever you do, get your short list of invitations out, and you should be inviting those key people at least 3 times before the show.
And if you haven't done so already, go to our website under the marketing kit and download the free buyer list, and you can use this to start with your invites.
That buyer list is in Excel format. You have all the information there of every buyer who attended the 2013 show. You can sort that list by store, category. There's all sorts of ways to manipulate that list. The only information you will not find on that list is an email address. So I know Ed's a big proponent of the postcard mailing, but it's very important that you do invite these buyers. And you can call them, phone numbers, all the information you need to touch them is there with the exception of email. The other tool, Ed mentioned this SEER. We have a white paper that's on our website that you can also download. It's a whole spread on delivering value at the show. And we're trying to find the location for that for you on our website, but you can always search white paper, and it'll bring you to a link that you can download that document. It's definitely worth reading. It's got a lot of great information in it, and it'll give you some good data and good points on just how to gain ROI at the show.
Nancy, you're right. I am a big believer in postcard mailings. I especially like any themed, meaningful postcards followed up by phone calls from your staff. And I often speak to aspects of mass customization. For any of you that like to give away a premium to your key guests at the show, I'll use a very simple example. You might give away a book, for instance, and that book very well may have something to do with your product, your service, your industry that you would like to share, something that will be kept by the targeted attendee. And if you take that mass-produced item and customize it just by writing a brief passage on the inside cover, for instance, such as, "Thanks for stopping by," most likely that's something that person will keep. It won't end up in the trash can later. And then as far as invitations, I'll use a perfect example of a company I worked with over 10 years ago at the Houseware Show that had a major display in the front of the South Building that once told me, "Ed, Walmart never comes by to visit us. We're right up front. We have a great product. We're very visible, but they never stop by." And when I asked them if they ever invite at Walmart, they said, well, no, we don't. So when I recommended we invite them that year, guess who came by? Walmart stopped in, and now they do quite a bit of business with Walmart. So invite anybody you think is important to you. As you prepare your salespeople, make sure they understand all of your products and services. I know some of your companies have a lot of SKUs, but you don't exude a lot of confidence when you can't answer the buyer's questions or provide them with all the information necessary on your product list. Make sure you know who your target audience is. Make sure your sales staff understands the kind of people, the kind of companies they're seeking out. I'm a big believer in getting to the show early and taking a look at who your competitors are and what they're doing in the show. So please understand the lay of the land. But I also want you to reverse the table and be very careful of who's watching you, especially during show hours. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term outboarding. But outboarding is typically when a competitor will float around your display during show hours and try to watch who you're speaking to. They try to steal your leads. Now, if you believe that this is happening during the show, all you need to do is call the show manager immediately. They'll take care of the issue. They're very good about making sure you're protected. The other thing I'm going to suggest is take your phone out and take a picture of that person if you can. So this way you can share it with the management team.
And we have, here at IHA, we have a process that non-exhibiting companies have to follow, including paying a badge fee, because we believe that if they're going to come to the show, they should help pay for the show. So there will be some of your competitors that aren't exhibiting on the show floor. So if they do approach your booth, please let us know as soon as you can, and we'll do what we need to do.
We have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
What is the link again to the white paper that you mentioned?
For now, they just need to go to housewares.org, and then in the search button, type in white paper, and the very first one that comes up is current for 2014. We're trying to locate where else you can find it on the site, but for now, that's the best way to get it, and then you can just download that link. It's at least a 15-page document, but again, definitely worth taking the time to read through. It's got some really great information in it.
Okay, and the next question we have is in regards to Housewares Connect 365. And it says, under the Message Center, it says send postcard. How does this work? And what really is this? Is this contacting the buyers?
Yes, what that is an electronic postcard. You get to send 3 of them prior to the show and 1 after the show. And what it is a wizard that's going to take you through some steps. You're going to answer some questions, and it's going to build your list. Once you've completed building your wizard and your postcard, it's going to send this postcard to the buyer's briefcase that we've created for them, and they will be able to view it. Each week we send out an email to the buyers letting them know they have messages. So at that point, it's up to the buyer to open it and contact you or put your company on their visit list at the show.
Thank you. That's all the questions we have right now.
On that electronic postcard, you know, our new mantra here is 3 touches to make sure that you are pre-planning, as Ed's mentioned a few times, pre-planning, understanding who your target audience is, reaching out, making invites. The Message Center electronically is one way to do that, but we really do encourage you to use that buyer list and go through some of the old-fashioned methods like picking up the phone or sending a hard postcard through the mail. There's so many tools now, web-based tools where you can get printing done fairly inexpensively, that we really recommend more than just one tactic. There's several. 3 touches is the mantra. Use that. Reach out to these people 3 times at least to make sure that you get noticed and that they do visit your booth at the show. As Ed mentioned, it's a very large show, and there's limited time to get to everybody.
If we have no other questions, we're going to proceed forward. I remind everybody, if you have a uniform for your sales staff, please make sure they understand what they're wearing and on which day. Nothing more embarrassing than showing up in your black shirt when it's a white shirt day.
We get this question in some of our other webinars about attire. The housewares industry is still very much business attire. You'll see most men in suit and tie. That doesn't mean that for your company that has to be the dress code, because it does run the gamut. You will find buyers there from everything from professional dress to jeans and T-shirts, depending on what their company is and what they're doing. But just to give you a background, it's, you know, still a bit of business attire there, and I think the point here is be presentable and professional as best you can.
I agree. Dress for success. Remember to also dress for comfort. There's nothing worse than trying to do a good job while you're in pain. So I suggest wear a very comfortable pair of shoes. There are a lot of styles out there that I'm sure will fit your attire. It's good to have fun and be playful and have a theme, but make sure it represents your image. And regarding painful shoes, and I'm not pointing out at anybody, but women, please keep your shoes on at the show. It looks much more professional with them on, and you don't know what's underneath those carpets. I do, and you don't want to step on a nail. You don't want to step on a screw. You're going to be in a much worse position. So if you have to take your shoes off, go somewhere private. As you prepare for the show and you're at the show, try to get a lot of rest. This is a very physical sales strategy. For 4 days at the show, and maybe even before while you're participating in the installation, you have to do a lot of physical work. Let's face it, most of us, the heaviest thing we ever lift on a given day might be a briefcase, a telephone, a cup of coffee. But when you're at the show, you are on your feet 10 to 12 hours a day, and you are constantly moving. So please try to get a lot of rest. You need to be sharp. You need to be on your game. And with that said, does anybody know what the 50-mile rule is? Raise your hand. Okay. 50-mile rule is whenever you're 50 miles or more away from home, you can drink what you want, eat what you want, stay up as late as you want, and have a good old time. That doesn't work with trade shows, because if you have to be up and on your toes, engaging and entertaining and charming, it's hard when you're dragging around a hangover or you're suffering from lack of sleep. So please, get a lot of rest. Whenever you can, share images, layouts, diagrams of your display with your sales staff before they get to the show. The last thing you want them to do is get to the show and not understand what they're working in. There may be some rules and regulations within your space, such as a reservation schedule for any private meeting rooms. Have them walk the show, understand where the restrooms are at, understand where the eateries are at. And by all means, there's a 20-80 rule here. And every salesperson I've ever met believes that the display is 80%, does 80% of all the work with the sales staff. That's not true. It only does about 20%. It represents your image. It sends a message. It will allow you to exhibit your products, but it won't close the sale. Your salespeople have to be ready to do that. You're going to be issued badges, and you're also going to see people walking the show in badges. You need to understand which badges are important to you and what they represent. While you're handing out your badges to your staff, please remind them, when at all possible, to wear the badge on their right lapel. Typically, it's on the right lapel because as you shake hands with somebody, you're pushing your badge forward so that they can see your name. And then if anybody approaches your display or walks in your space and doesn't have a badge, you are entitled to ask them for it. Make sure you understand who's visiting you. Goes back to that outboarding term earlier. You never know when a competitor is actually walking your space. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually walked in a space without a badge on. Nobody approached me at all. I wandered around aimlessly, taking in any information I wanted. That booth is a miniature version of your company. Would you let anybody walk through your front door without knowing who they are?
And so you know, your exhibitor badge will have a red stripe across the bottom. A buyer badge will have a green stripe, and media will have a blue stripe. Those are going to be your important people to watch for.
As your staff begins to prepare and pack everything for the show, if you're not already providing the following items, make sure they don't forget to bring them. Things such as a folio, pens, snacks, obviously their medication. Have lots of water for your staff at the booth. They should be talking a lot. They're going to become dehydrated. And by all means, one of the most important things that they're going to need are breath mints. I can't tell you how many times buyers have told me, well, I enjoyed speaking with the person, but his breath killed me. That's not the memory we want them to walk away with. If you're using lead scanners, make sure your staff knows how to use them. I know that there's different styles of lead scanners, different types, different capabilities, so please make sure you pick out the right one for yourselves. I typically prefer the ones that print out paper so that you can have a physical lead in your hand after the person walks away.
There are two types of lead scanner. Well, there's more than two, but for free, you can get two types of lead scanners. One is the type that Ed is talking about, which will print out a sheet of paper when you scan the buyer's badge, and that one will require electricity in your booth. The other one is a handheld scanner, which will be downloaded data after the show. So if you do get the handheld one, be sure to still collect a business card so you have that to compare to your list when you get it. And we have a limited amount of these, so if you haven't ordered one, I suggest you do it now because we will run out.
You can find that link on the marketing kit in the website. On the website, it will, I think, prompt you for a credit card, and that's really just like leaving your driver's license in case you don't return the equipment. However, we, as Katie mentioned, have limited amount of these available. I suggest you get on it as soon as possible so you can get your free lead scanner for the show.
One other item regarding scanners and badges. When you want to scan somebody's badge, ask them to give it to you. I once watched a man pull a badge off of a woman's chest, which shocked her in itself, and it sent the wrong message. That's not what you want people to remember when they walk away. Again, we want a positive, memorable experience for these people. So let's try to set that. And with that said, we want to go into the engagement of your audience. So when we set this positive, memorable mood, you're going to try to separate yourself from your competition at the same time. You want to make sure your leads will take your calls later. And part of that is creating the right experience. It normally takes about 1.4 seconds for every 10 linear feet of display space to get somebody's attention. And within that time, once you do have their attention, it takes approximately 4 seconds to make an impression. That impression is made up of a recipe, and that recipe boils down to the following. 36% of your body language. So again, be well rested. Stand up straight, big smile, hands behind your back or holding your folio. 57% of it is actually your attitude and how you're going to say things. So again, be witty, be entertaining, be friendly. And finally, only 7% of what you actually say or your opening question is going to be impressed on their memory. So actions do speak louder than words in this case. Remember to smile, make good eye contact, shake hands, introduce yourself. Try, whenever possible, not to let your eyes drop down and stare at badges. It comes across as ingenuine, especially for men when they have to stare at a woman's badge, and we all know where the badges are typically placed. So it just becomes uncomfortable. I'm going to remind you of some of the don'ts, and this is probably the biggest one. Everybody wants to be on their cell phone because they have business outside of the show that they have to conduct, so they're checking emails, checking voicemails, sending texts. I've gotten to the point with some of our sales managers and trade show managers now where during show hours, they collect every salesperson's phone and lock it in the closet or lock it in a counter because it's such a hard habit to break. If any of your salespeople have to be on a phone, ask them to leave your space.
I'm going to interject. Recently at a trade show, I was in mid-conversation with a company, and the guy received a phone call and took it in the middle of our conversation. And it left a really horrible impression. I mean, he was polite, he excused himself, but we were in the middle of a business discussion, and it really left a bad impression. And that's what I remember about the company, not the product, not what we were trying to accomplish. So there's a little antidote on why cell phones can be detrimental to your sales effort.
You want every visitor to feel important. When you're on your phone, you are not making them your complete focus.
We have another question here about the lead retrievals. How good is the mobile app? Or the mobile devices, are those any good?
They're very good, yes.
They're very good. Also, one of the things with the lead retrievers that we cover in our marketing webinar is with the lead retrievers, that is really the only place that you can get your prospect's email address. So they become even more important in that respect for follow-up and contact information.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding newspapers, quite often, end of show days, last day of the show, you'll see salespeople sitting in a booth all by themselves reading a paper while the world walks by. These trade shows are very, very large, so they could seem as though they're not well attended, but you could very well have thousands of leads walking the show, and you don't know when one will come around the corner and look at your space or be ready to be engaged. Now, if you take a look at Sears research, they will tell you that 8 out of 10 companies will still obtain a lead in the final 2 hours of a show on the last day of the show. So the leads are there. Be ready and put away the newspapers, please.
I just want to reiterate that. Don't get caught up. The last day of the show is always the last day of the show, and it will seem slower. However, we know from our data that some of the most important buyers are still on the show floor the last day of the show. We also know that it will seem, and it can seem, very quiet and empty. But you have to know when you're in these exhibit halls and they are so large, there could be 1,500 people on the floor and it won't seem like it. So please keep that in mind and don't let your guard down the last day because it's just the last day.
And don't tear down early. We'll come get you if you do.
Uh-oh. Trade show police are on the way.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I have actually watched people do this, and in itself, sleeping with hot coffee in your hand is dangerous, but as far as sleeping in a chair, it happens. Those are the folks that broke the 50-mile rule, and if you are going to drink in your space, please be discreet about it. Obviously, if you've offered coffee or water to your guests, it's okay to drink along with them. If you can avoid eating in your space, please do so. Again, if you're entertaining your guests, your audience, and they're eating along with you, fine. But otherwise, it just doesn't look appropriate. It's unprofessional. Go to the eateries. As far as your staff is concerned, don't let your salespeople cluster together unless they're going to buy from one another. Don't let your salespeople cross their arms and ignore their audience, turn their back on the aisle. Be prepared. Again, be warm, friendly, open, inviting. Put your hands behind your back if you're not holding your folio. But please don't ignore your audience. And whenever you do engage somebody, this is extremely important. Please start with an open-ended, meaningful question. And if you can interject a hint of playfulness and be a little entertaining, please do. One of my favorite lines is, "What brings you to the show? And please don't tell me it's an airplane." Now, for as silly as that may sound, it's very effective and works extremely well because I always get a chuckle out of somebody when I approach them with it. And typically, what a lot of other salespeople on the show floor are actually asking is, "Can I help you?" or how can I help you, or how are you? Those are not open-ended, meaningful questions. I guarantee your salespeople will still ask them, but try to get them to break that habit. And by the way, there are several other opening lines, and if any of our listening audience has any lines they'd like to share, please send them in. And that takes us over to the qualifying process. While you're qualifying, you're going to have to make some decisions through the process. You're going to have to determine whether or not the person you're speaking to is truly a prospect or not. In fact, I don't know how many of you know the average time the typical trade show attendee will spend inside of a booth space. It's 7.5 minutes. So inside of 7.5 minutes, if you're qualifying properly and disengaging properly, you'll have all the information you need to follow up later. Obviously, there's going to be some that are much less and much more, but the average is 7.5 minutes. Every company is slightly different when it comes to a prospect. The broad strokes are primarily the same, but what you need to do is define what a prospect is to your sales force. That starts out with addressing the products and services that you offer. Does the prospect have a need for them? Will they buy what you provide? And by the way, when you're qualifying your prospects, by all means, after you ask your question, write the answers down. This is extremely important because, first of all, they'll feel important. Secondly, you'll never remember everything after all the people you've spoken to over the last 4 days. Thirdly, not all salespeople will be the person that follows up with the prospect later. Some of this will become territorial or by product. So please provide as much information as you possibly can on the lead sheet or in your notes. And ask for a business card that you can staple to the lead sheet later on if possible. Sometimes the data entry could have an error. So if you have a card to cross-reference with, you'll know you have a lot of good information. But one of the other major definitions of a prospect are understanding the timing of their needs. Does this fall within a reasonable delivery time for your own company? Is the endeavor funded? Do they have reasonable price points? Is this the kind of company you want to work with? Are they too big for you? Are they too small for you? So please make sure you understand the dollars involved. It's okay to ask. Does everybody know what that is? I haven't heard anything. All right, I'll move forward. Obviously, it's a picture of a whale. But in our world, this is a very, very, very large prospect. And this is one of the reasons why you're at the show. Aside from improving your image, pushing your brand, you're looking for prospects. And when you come across a whale, you have to understand what to do next because they are far and few in between. And this is what you do when you find that whale. You pamper them. You smother them with attention. You bring in management. You bring in additional support. You ask them if they have time for breakfast, lunch, dinner while they're at the show. You continue to go well past that 7.5 average minutes for any prospect because this opportunity could change the course of your company. While you're qualifying, try to find out who the incumbent company is that they're working with. Find out who your competition is. The more knowledge you have, the more competitive you can be later. And then, of course, try to find out how you get on their short list for their RFP process, their selection process, what it might take to take the sale further. And finally, when it comes to qualifying, please grade your leads. You'll have to come up with your own grading system, but ABCD will help you prioritize later as to the importance and follow-up priority list. But that'll also help you address the return on your investment. And then, of course, once you're through all of your qualifying questions, you need to disengage and follow up later. I feel that this is one of the most important steps in the process because this is your last opportunity to make that person remember who you are. A very simple way to do that, and very effective, is when you're at the end of your qualifying process, ask the prospect when and how they would like to be followed up with. And you can even go as far as telling them, you guarantee most salespeople will not ask them this question. That in itself will make you stand out. So whether they want to call, an email, a text, an overnight package, tell them you're going to guarantee that you're going to follow up. Now, another key statistic in the trade show world is that 11 out of 12 people never keep their promise on follow-up. Be that one person out of 12 that does it right. The other thing I want you to ask the prospect is, let's start getting a commitment now. Tell them you're going to follow up the way you promised. And all you ask is that they take your call or respond accordingly within the time span that you've agreed to. And then, of course, as you're ending, and I'm also going to speak to the fork in the road. One of the best lines to ever use in disengagement is, have a good show. It's friendly, not awkward at all. Everybody knows what you mean. But if you ever run across somebody who's not really a prospect, or at least not right for you or your company, try to interject that line when you can, and they'll know the conversation is over. Now, I also want you to remember, some of the people that you're going to disengage with today, very well could be the same person for a different company later. That could be a prospect. So keep it professional, give them the time you think is necessary, and make it a meaningful experience. So that concludes our brief session today. It looks like I went slightly past 30 minutes, and I don't know if we have any other questions from our audience.
We do have some questions. We have a couple questions regarding the lead retrievals again, Katie. Somebody signed up for a lead retrieval yesterday and it was $380. Can I cancel that and get a free handheld retrieval?
Yes. They will need to use the form that's on our website to order the free one. There are options that you can upgrade these lead retrievals, so look at the options that you're getting with the $325 one because they are different.
Okay, because she said the free one was not offered, and she didn't know that they were available.
If she wants to email me at KTHILL@housewares.org, I can help her out.
Okay. Let's see. And somebody's asking, how important do you think it is to have hard copies of wholesale line sheets for buyers?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How important do you think it is to have hard copies of wholesale line sheets for buyers?
I believe it's extremely important to have hard copies whenever possible. I'm a big believer in hard copies because then you can check the information right there. I've also run across, and this is going back to the early stages of lead retrieval, where the ones that did not produce paper printouts at that time often failed. And we're all there to collect our leads. Now, the world of lead retrieval systems have gotten much better, but I'm a bit of a dinosaur in this case. And I also like to write my notes right on the lead sheet. So this way everything travels together.
And also keep in mind, after the show, we are going to send an email to the buyers that says, these are the exhibitors that scanned your badge. So they have a list of all the booth visits that they were at and can follow up with you, too, if they would like.
The next question is it better to leave your booth to eat? I am the only one from my company going to the show.
Yeah, I often run across that. It's tough when you're one person in your space and you've got to support them all day, support your audience all day long. There are going to be times, obviously, when you look down the aisle and there's nobody walking up. Take your drink of water, have your snack, take your medication. We all know that you may need to take a break at some point. You're going to need to be strategic when you do this, but by all means, understand that you could be there for the 8 to 10 hour day by yourself, and be prepared.
The next question is, we have a small sales staff in our booth. What is your advice for a situation where a big, important buyer walks into your booth while you're talking to a smaller independent retailer? What's the best way to end your conversation without offending the smaller buyer?
I've handled that a couple ways in the past. Now, I don't know the type of booth you have, but for instance, this is one of the reasons why I like to have AV support in the space. Quite often, and it doesn't have to be a big prospect, it could be any additional prospect. If you have more prospects than you have salespeople, I use the AV equipment to say, you know what, we're just finishing up a conversation over here. One of us will be with you momentarily. Can I take your badge so we can scan it later? That's one way of capturing their lead so that they don't walk away on you, at least getting their name and information for future follow-up. And secondly, if you put them in front of a 3 to 4 minute looping AV presentation, that will keep them entertained for that long and at least buy you a little bit of time. And if you have more prospects than you have salespeople, that's a great problem to have.
And somebody says she sees more and more TVs with booth videos and trade show booths. Do you think this is a good way to draw potential customers or a lazy excuse for selling?
No, it's never a lazy excuse for selling. Again, I'm going to go back to the booth and everything within it. That booth is 20% of your sale, and it's supporting your message. Quite often, I find that in the world of trade shows, a monitor is much better than graphics. And this is from the efficiency standpoint of cost and ability. You can go ahead and change your presentation on a 50-inch monitor on any given day. You can go ahead and just put your own artwork on it on any given day instead of producing individual graphics which take up more space. You also have the ability of sound if you want to use testimonials or any other information for features and benefits of a product. So I, by all means, am a big fan of AV support. And by the way, it's also the 21st century. It's okay to step into the higher technology world when it comes to promoting your image.
Okay, and somebody's asking, do you think we should send a follow-up email or a call a couple days after the show, or a week, since they may be less stressed after the show?
Well, I'm going to let you handle that, but if you're qualifying properly, you know exactly when you should follow up, because in the disengagement process, you're going to ask them, how and when do you want me to follow up? It is okay to send out a blanket thank you for stopping by after the show to everybody, but as you're grading your leads and understanding your prospects' needs, you are going to know when and how you should follow up if you are asking the right questions.
And again, somebody's asking if this webinar will be given again. It will be available on our website.
It will be available on our website in the next few days.
How soon after the show is following up too soon?
Well, again, if you want to send out a blanket, thank you for coming by our booth, whether that's an email, a phone call, a letter, that's up to you. But again, you should obviously know through the process of qualifying and disengaging how and when you should follow up with every individual person.
Is it a good idea to use CDs as handouts instead of paper?
I missed
CD instead of paper. CD. As handouts.
I'm a big believer in paper.
You can always do the follow-up portion.
All right, I think that is all the questions that we have.
Well, everybody, if you have any other questions for us, please feel free to reach out to Nancy and share them. And if we can help you any further, we will. And after today's session, 6 of you and Nancy will let you know if you've won. We'll be receiving a book that I often promote, written by Steve Miller on preparing for trade shows.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Just to reiterate, the webinar will be up on our website by tomorrow, probably. So just check back for that. We also have a few housekeeping things. One is we will be doing another webinar next Wednesday on marketing opportunities and media exposure. We only have slots for 100 people, so if that's something you're interested in learning about, we encourage you to sign up for that as soon as you receive the email from your sales manager, which will be going out tomorrow. And we are always available to answer questions for you. Again, Ed is with MEC Exhibits. If you've got exhibit questions or need help with your exhibit, you can always reach out to him. He'd be happy to help you, and he will ask you when you want him to follow up with you. So thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at the show, and we're really excited about the 2014 lineup. So see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.